So, hello and welcome to our webinar. Today is all about trying to answer the questions that you may have in relation to your application for KA2 Strategic Partnership funding in the field of VET under the 2019 call. Just to introduce ourselves again, for those of you who have recently joined us, my name is Zoe and I work in the Erasmus Plus team at Chorus UK. Presenting today with me is my colleague Emmanuel, and my colleagues Lana and Indre will be answering some of your questions via the questions facility. This webinar is aimed at applicants looking to apply for funding under the decentralised action of KA2, known as Strategic Partnerships, in the field of vocational educational training. It is very important to consider before applying which field your project is most relevant to in terms of addressing the policy and action priorities, and which field is most likely to be impacted by your project results and outcomes. In all cases, the priorities addressed by the project and the composition of the partnership must be relevant to the field the application is submitted under. You must take care to complete and submit the application form for the field most relevant to your project. For 2019 call, we have developed the KA2 Guide for Applicants, which can be downloaded from our website. During today's webinar, we will provide you with an overview of information about a number of key topics. During the webinar, there will also be an opportunity to vote for the topic you most like to hear about. We will then go into a little more detail on this chosen topic. So, just to give you an overview of what we'll be covering in today's webinar, I'll be presenting a brief introduction to KA2 Strategic Partnerships in VET. I'll then move on to talk in a little bit more detail about the three topics shown on the screen. On your right-hand side from the tool panel, you should be able to download a handout. This contains useful links to support you with the application process. For a step-by-step guide on how to complete the application, please read our Guide for Applicants, which can be found on the Apply for Funding section of our website. You can also learn about hints and tips on completing the application form by listening to our pre-recorded webinars, which are available to download under the News and Events section of our websites. Links to these resources can be found in the handout. I'd like to remind you, if you haven't already, to watch the pre-recorded webinar. This webinar provides all potential applicants with a run-through of the new web application form and provides hints and tips as well as rules and requirements of the submission process. Please view the webinar which is most relevant to you based on your project type. So before we begin, I would like to remind you of the latest information regarding the participation of the UK in Erasmus Plus in light of Brexit. The UK-NA understands that you may have questions on this subject following the publication of the revised technical notice released by the UK government on January the 29th, 2019. The UK government and the UK-NA continue to recommend that applications are submitted to the UK National Agency for the 2019 Erasmus Plus and the ESC call for proposals as normal, as this will ensure that organisations and individuals can take part in the programme if a withdrawal agreement is in place. Any queries which we receive today regarding Brexit will be noted, and we will aim to respond to these within 2 working days of this webinar session. I would like to remind you that the latest information about the UK's participation in Erasmus Plus after Brexit can be found on the Brexit update page of the website. Please check this page regularly and subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest updates. So to provide you now with a bit more information on how KA2 works. So strategic partnerships are cooperation projects which allow organisations to work together to improve the quality of education and training provision, tackle common issues, and share or develop innovative practice. One organisation, the applicant, applies for funding on behalf of the whole partnership, and if the project is approved, this partner has overall responsibility for managing the funding and is accountable to the national agency for this project. There are 2 types of strategic partnership you can apply for: innovation or exchange of practices. We'll talk more about these in the later session. You need to choose the project type from within the application form. All strategic partnerships projects must involve a consortium of at least 3 organisations from 3 different programme countries. Organisations from partner countries cannot be the applicant, but can be involved as partners only where it can be shown that their involvement will bring essential added value to the project in terms of their skills, experience and expertise. Our advice would be to choose your partners carefully. You may be working with them for several years and the success of your project depends on them. Please make sure you have a good mix of appropriate and relevant partners with the capacity, skills, experience and expertise to deliver the project objectives and activities to a good standard. Aim to have a well-balanced partnership where each partner is actively involved in the delivery of the project. You may want to consider including partners with a mix of experience of European cooperation, including, where appropriate, organisations that are new to Erasmus Plus and/or European partnership working and will benefit from the experience. If you involve newer organisations, you may want to include some more experienced partners as well and have plans in place to ensure that all partners are able to contribute. It is possible to include partners from other fields of education, training and youth in strategic partnerships for VET, especially when this helps you to achieve your objectives. If so, you should make it clear in your application how their inclusion will add value and help to achieve the planned objectives, results and outcomes, which must be relevant to the field you submit the application under, i.e. in VET. When looking for potential partners, you can seek recommendations from trusted partners and/or exploit known links and networks. You can also search for complementary organisations with experience of Erasmus Plus and its predecessor programs via the Erasmus Plus project results platform, or use the partner finding tool on the Apale platform. The funding for strategic partnerships is calculated based on the activities and outcomes your projects will deliver. There are a number of rules which apply to the KA2 budget, and you can find full details in Part B of the programme guide and in our guidance for applicants. The funding is intended as a contribution to the costs of running your project and may not cover all costs. The maximum funding available is equivalent to €12,500 per month for the duration of the project, up to a maximum of €450,000. However, not all projects will request or receive the maximum funding. The minimum duration for a strategic partnership project is 12 months, and the maximum is 36 months. All 2019 core projects must start between the 1st of September and the 31st of December 2019, and all projects must finish by the 31st of August 2022. Strategic partnerships aim to support cooperation, peer learning and the exchange of experiences and practice at EU level, as well as promoting, sharing, development and implementation of innovative practices. They enable organisations from different countries to work together to address a common problem, achieve a common aim and/or develop an innovative solution. All strategic partnerships need to demonstrate a link to the priorities of the action outlined in the programme guide. They must address at least one horizontal or sector-specific priority. Where a horizontal priority is selected, applicants must still show how their project is relevant to and has potential to impact on the sector the application has been submitted under, for example, VET. Priorities can be found on pages 106 to 110 of the programme guide. Please be aware that there have been changes within the priorities. Therefore, you should refer to the new Erasmus Plus programme guide and the guide for experts for the 2019 call. Strategic partnerships are flexible in terms of what they can entail and in size. This means that there is flexibility in terms of the activities you implement, as long as your application can demonstrate that these activities are appropriate to achieve the objectives set out for the project. The type of strategic partnership to be developed will need to be selected within the application form. It is therefore important to give careful consideration to the type of project that is best suited to your objectives and the experience and capacity of your partnership. As mentioned, in your application, you can select one of the following two project types. Firstly, strategic partnerships for innovation. This can sometimes be referred to as development of innovation or supporting innovation projects. These projects are expected to develop innovative outputs and undertake intensive dissemination and exploitation activities. Strategic partnerships supporting innovation can request specific funding for intellectual outputs and multiplier events in order to support the delivery of their objectives. Secondly, strategic partnerships supporting exchange of good practices. The main objective of these projects is to allow organisations to develop and reinforce networks, increase their capacity to operate at a transnational level, and exchange ideas, practices and methods. Depending on their objectives, projects may also develop tangible outputs and are still expected to disseminate their results of their activities in a way that is proportionate to the aims and scope of the project. These results and activities will be co-financed through the Standard Project Management and Implementation Budget, also known as PMI, and no separate funding will be available to develop intellectual outputs or multiplier events. Due to the complex nature of Key Action 2, we recommend this type of project as a good entry point for applicants who have been active within other areas of the Erasmus Plus programme, smaller organisations, or less experienced partnerships. So how should you choose which type of strategic partnership project to apply for? You will need to select the type of strategic partnership at application stage. However, this should be discussed with partners during the initial planning stages, taking into consideration the proposed objectives and activities of the project, and the size, capacity and experience of the partnership. In all cases, applicants should choose the project format which is most appropriate for delivering the planned project objectives and results, bearing in mind the capacity and experience of the partnership. All applications will be quality assessed in line with the proportionality principle. This means that the scores allocated for the quality award criteria will take into consideration the size and type of the project and the composition of the partnership. So on this slide, we have tried to provide some examples of possible activities. However, this is not an exhaustive list, but it does provide information on the specific activities and outputs you can plan to deliver. But of course, this will be dependent on the of the objectives within your project. So now let's find out what topic you would like to discuss in more detail. So please choose the topic that you would have the most questions about from our poll. Excellent. So it seems as though the most important topic for the majority of you is the changes for 2019 call. So we'll cover this in more detail. It seems as though a lot of you are also interested in the budget, so we'll go through that in some detail as well. Great, thank you. Great, so moving on to the key changes for the 2019 call. So in 2019 call, there's been a few changes which is important to be aware of. Firstly, there have been some changes to the Key Action 2 priorities, both horizontal and field specific. So it is very important to refer to the current guidelines in Part B of the 2019 Programme Guide. For 2019 call, there are two additional priorities for VET. One focusing on strengthening key competencies in initial and continuing VET, and the other focusing on developing sustainable partnerships as a form of raising the attractiveness and excellence in VET. For more information on these new priorities and the previous priorities, please revisit pages 102 to 106 of the 2019 Programme Guide. As of 2019, Serbia has now become incorporated fully into the Erasmus Plus programme and will actively participate as a programme country. Serbia will continue to appear in the application form as a list of possible destinations. If you have a partner from Serbia within your consortium, extensive justification in line with partner country organisations will no longer be required. As of 2019, as regards to the budget, further clarification has been provided within the 2019 Programme Guide in regards to exceptional costs for expensive travel costs. This budget category, introduced last year for learning, teaching and training activities, allows exceptional costs to be claimed for unusually expensive travel costs for participants in learning, teaching and training activities. Where claimed, these costs will be utilised to cover the travel for each participant, and therefore the standard travel grant cannot be requested. Speaking of learning, teaching and training activities, there is an additional short-term activity for VET that has been introduced for the 2019 call. Short-term exchanges of groups of pupils is now a possible activity for VET learners. The eligible duration of this activity is from 3 days to 2 months, excluding travel days. Pupils from different countries can work together in activities linked to the aims of the partnership. This activity is designed to offer international learning experiences to learners, supporting their understanding of the diversity of Europe and become familiar with the intercultural competencies necessary for their personal development. For more information on this, such as the funding rules for learning, teaching and training activities, please visit page 120 to 121 of the 2019 Programme Guide. Throughout 2018, at the end of 2017, the European Commission introduced the web application forms for the youth sector, and as of 2019, the web application is now applicable for Key Action 2 projects, including VET. It is compulsory to complete the web form when applying for Key Action 2 funding. Please note the application form is no longer a PDF document and must be completed online in your web browser. You will need to use your EU login details to access the web application form. The form has been successfully tested on Internet Explorer, Firefox and Google Chrome browsers. However, we recommend that where possible, you use a PC to complete the form, as some Mac computers are not compatible with the form. So if anybody has any questions regarding the changes for 2019, then please type those into the question box, which should be in the control panel on your right-hand side. I'm going to allow a few minutes for your questions that you have, and my colleagues, Indre, will also read out a few questions, answers that we received beforehand. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So first question is, does the lead organization need to be a VET organization, or can it be a higher education organization? Erasmus Plus VET funding is open to any public or private organization active in the fields of education, training and youth, or any public or private organization active in the labor market. Therefore, a higher education institution can be a lead organization for Key Action 2 VET projects. The second question is, are there restrictions on kinds of organizations who can partner? What costs are allowable for support? The same as for applicants, Erasmus Plus VET funding is open to any public or private organization active in the fields of education, training and youth, or any public or private organization active in the labor market. It is important to remember that strategic partnership projects must have a minimum of 3 different partners from 3 different program countries in order to be eligible and considered for funding. Budget for partners is calculated in the same way as for applicant organization. Only for project management and implementation budget, partner can receive 250 euros per month, where applicant receives 500 euros per month.
Great, thanks very much, Indre. We're now going to move on to go into a little bit more information about the Key Action 2 budget. The budget for strategic partnerships, sorry about that, just a technical error. So the budget for strategic partnerships is intended to be a contribution to the costs of a project. There is no formal requirement for match funding. However, the principle of co-financing applies. Please see page 258 to 259 of the Programme Guide for more information. This means that the grant amount is a contribution to the costs of delivering the project and may not cover all costs. The budget is made up of a number of different budget items, some of which are calculated on a unit cost basis and some of which are calculated on the basis of estimated actual costs. Some budget items, such as intellectual outputs and multiplier events, are only applicable for supporting innovation projects. Other budget items, such as exceptional costs and transnational teaching, learning and training activities, may be applicable for any type of project, but must be strongly justified within the application form in order to be approved. All applicants must refer to the detailed budget guidance on page 117 to 124 of the 2019 Programme Guide. This guidance outlines definitions of what is considered eligible for funding under each budget heading and any conditions that apply, in addition to explaining how the budget item is calculated. It is very important to ensure that the funding you request for your project is eligible and well justified within the application. Ineligible or unjustified budget items may not be approved. Applicants should design their project budget around the activities and outputs they need to deliver in order to achieve the planned project objectives. The budget forms part of the overall project design, and the coherence and value for money of the budget will be assessed as part of the quality assessment. A good quality application will have a well-designed budget which is realistic, proportionate, and complies with the budget rules. So as I mentioned earlier, the grant is a contribution to the costs of delivering the project, and some budget items are calculated on the basis of unit costs and some on the basis of estimated actual costs. Some budget items are only available for innovation projects, intellectual outputs and multiplier events, and some can only be approved where adequately justified. So first of all, project management and implementation. So all projects will request project management and implementation funding. This budget is a lump sum to support the costs of managing and delivering the project. As outlined in the programme guide, PMI can be used to co-finance small-scale activities or local activities, such as developing project websites, a small-scale dissemination costs. It is calculated based on the number of partners and the duration of the project. Exchange of practice projects are mainly co-financed using this budget item. Next, we have transnational project meetings. So generally, all Key Action 2 projects will also request funding under transnational project meetings. So these meetings are in the projects to ensure that partners meet and discuss the project and plan activities. The number and timing of transnational project meetings should be justified and proportionate. This grant is calculated based on unit cost per participant, depending on the distance bands. So moving on to intellectual outputs. So these are specifically for innovation projects, and innovation projects can request the additional funding to deliver intellectual outputs. These must be tangible outputs which are substantial in quality and quantity. A large focus of supporting innovation projects and also intellectual outputs are their potential for wider use, extensive dissemination, and maximised impacts. Examples of tangible outputs can include curricula, large-scale educational materials, open educational resources, and IT tools, in addition to in-depth studies and peer learning methods. Materials such as project management tools, dissemination plans, project-specific needs analyses, and project evaluation reports would not be considered eligible as an intellectual output, as these don't meet the criteria to have a potential for wider use, dissemination, or impact. It is important to ensure that the intellectual outputs within your application form are well described and that there's a clear link between the planned output and the project objectives. It is very important to ensure that intellectual outputs will be eligible as described within the 2019 Guide for Applicants and the 2019 Programme Guide. Manager and administrative staff costs are expected to be co-financed using the Programme Management and Implementation budget, unless extensively justified within the application form. So moving on now to multiplier events. So funding for multiplier events, again, is only available for innovation projects which plan to deliver intellectual outputs. This funding is for national or international conferences, events and seminars which are specifically aimed at sharing and dissemination the intellectual outputs developed by the project with a wider audience, beyond the immediate project partners and beneficiaries. Therefore, in order to be eligible for funding, participants must be from organisations external from the consortium. The budget is calculated based on the estimated numbers of local or international participants. Local means from the country where the event will be taking place, and international means a participant travelling from a different country. This budget category has a cap of €30,000 per project. So going on to a little bit more detail on the other budget items. So first of all, exceptional costs for goods and services. So this is a contribution of up to 75% of the costs of subcontracting or the purchase of goods and services where they cannot be provided by the project partners themselves for duly justified reasons. This budget item requires detailed justification within the application form, and requests for the costs under this budget heading are expected to be exceptional. For example, not every project would need them. This budget category has a cap of €50,000 per project. Next, we have special needs support. So this supports project participants with a disability or other specific health needs for which additional costs will be incurred. Again, requests for funding under this project must be justified in detail in the application form. So moving on now to learning, teaching and training activities. So within strategic partnerships, it is also possible for projects to include transnational teaching, training and learning activities, also known as learning mobilities. Where these are embedded within the project, they will clearly support the achievement of the project objectives. The inclusion of these activities needs to be justified within the application form, and they should not be stand-alone mobilities, but should deliver benefit to the project as a whole. Where these activities are justified, funding is available to co-finance travel, subsistence, and linguistic support. It is possible to include these activities in both innovation and exchange of practice projects. Most elements of the budget for teaching, training, and learning activities are calculated on the basis of unit costs. However, as mentioned earlier, there is exceptional cost for expensive travel costs, which is intended to co-finance exceptionally expensive travel costs, where the normal unit cost for travel would not cover at least 70% of the travel costs. Where justified, it is possible to request up to 80% of the expected actual costs. So now, if anybody has any questions specifically related to the budget, then we're happy to take some time to answer these. Additionally, my colleague Lana would like to answer some further questions over the mic.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lana, and I would like to thank you so far for the questions you have sent in the question box. I can assure that we all see them and receive, and we have already answered partly those questions, and definitely taken a note of any other questions, and we will return to you shortly. At the moment, I would like to answer two questions that were sent previously. It is about teaching, training, and learning activities. If our teacher training and learning activities are not formally accredited, would that weaken our application significantly? So that was one of the questions. And well, as there is no formal requirement for the learning, teaching, and training activities to be accredited, as an applicant organization, you may ensure that those are accredited, or you may not ensure. Either way, whatever your decision is, it should be well justified within the main body of the application form. So for whatever reason you are taking in your application form in relation to learning, teaching, and training activities, you should justify your decision and provide information why you have chosen this decision. So this is as to learning, teaching, and training activities, and I have also seen that we have a couple of questions in the question box about that. Be sure we will be coming back to you on these. And the second question was, how can we be specific about number of participants in associated projects yet to be organized by partners and their associates? So as you know, the part of the preparation activities for your project is to communicate with your project partners. Therefore, you have to make sure that you discuss these things and these moments with your project partnership beforehand. Of course, these numbers cannot be always very precise. These will be estimates. So at the moment, when developing your application, you will estimate these numbers and justify those within the application form. However, it is understandable that slight deviations might take place during the lifetime of the project. That will also have to be foreseen in a risk assessment of your project. Therefore, at the moment, as an answer to this question, it would be you are estimating these numbers of participants, and then you will correct them as you go. Yeah, thank you very much. That's it from me at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lana. I'm now going to pass over to my colleague Emmanuel in order for him to present some more information about the PIC process.
Hi everyone, so my name is Emmanuel. Organizations that have participated in Erasmus Plus previously will already have a PIC number. Nevertheless, this is an important part of the pre-application process, so we'd like to run through some key information about the PIC process, particularly for those of you who are applying for the first time. The information we present is also relevant to experienced applicants. So, before we continue, I'd like to run a quick poll to see how many of you already have a PIC. Okay, so everybody who voted, which was the vast majority, already does have a PIC. So I don't need to go into too much detail because you already know. But for those of you who didn't vote, I'll assume that you don't have a PIC. So the basic process is you register an EU login, which is formerly known as ECAS. And on the participant portal, you update your organization details and upload supporting documents. The link to the participant portal is here, and you can check your organization's PIC by using the search function under the organizations tab, and you'll need to upload a legal entity form and financial identification form, both of which can be found on the Erasmus Plus website. I'll now go through the validation process. Once registered, all organizations must have their legal status validated by the national agency in their country. This applies to both applicants and partner organizations. Organizations cannot receive Erasmus Plus funding until they have been validated. To enable the UK national agency to validate your organization, you'll need to upload certain documents onto the participant portal. As mentioned, both you and your partners must upload a legal entity form into the participant portal, as well as supporting documents for this form. Please be aware that there are 3 types of legal entity documents available: individual, private company, and public entity. Please choose the appropriate legal entity form depending on whether your organization is a private company or a public entity. For KA2 Strategic Partnership projects, you should not use the individual legal entity form. For more information or specific examples, please visit our website. The legal entity form must be completed in full and must be accompanied by evidence of your organization's legal status. The supporting documents must be consistent with the information about your organization provided on both the participant portal and the legal entity form. As an applicant, you will also need to upload a financial identification form. The financial identification form should be signed, dated, and stamped by your bank, or alternatively should be accompanied by a recent bank statement for the given bank account. You should provide details for an account that your grant can be paid into and which is set up to receive payments in euro. If the organization is awarded funding, at a later stage you will be asked to upload a refined bank details form, and you'll need to ensure that the information on this form is consistent with the financial identification form. Please note that your organization must be validated in order for your application to be considered for funding. However, validation is a separate process and not linked to the assessment of your application. Therefore, if your organization is validated, it does not automatically imply that your application has been successful. Links to the templates for that legal entity form and financial identification form can be found in the handout. If you've applied for Erasmus Plus funding before and have already been validated by the UK National Agency, you'll still If you've applied for Erasmus Plus funding before and have already been validated by the UK National Agency, you'll still need to ensure that the above documents are correct and up to date. Outdated documents cannot be deleted, but you can upload another document with the updated information. Please ensure that updated documents uploaded onto the participant portal are clearly named, including the date of update to avoid confusion. So at this stage, I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions about the PIC or validation process to put those in the question box.
So hello everybody again, my name is Lana, and thank you very much for your questions that are coming into the question box. I would like to remind you some moments about PIC numbers. So by the time you are developing your application form, you should have all the PIC numbers of all the partners and the partner organizations that you are going to develop your project with. So that will ensure that all the organizations and all the budget items are calculated within the web application form for all your partnership. So yeah, and as majority of us seen that you all have PIC numbers, please ensure that information is up to date on participant portal. And also we had a question about Serbia previously, and if there will be any problems with their PIC number. Well, it shouldn't have any problems with PIC numbers as long as the organizations are registered, because it will be a non-EU program country. So at the moment, if you have anything else about PIC numbers, please drop these questions in a question box, and I believe we can proceed now with the webinar. Thank you very much for the attention.
So as we are approaching the end of the webinar today, before we close, are there any other questions at this point about anything else? If so, please continue to add those to the question box. And this is the final poll of the session. What we'd like to know is, does your organization feel prepared to submit a KA2 vet application? Okay, thank you for your answers. Thank you for your answers. To help you with your application, we'll finish with some further guidance. So before you finish today, I'd just like to mention where you can find additional guidance and support in the run-up to the deadline, which, as a reminder, is Thursday the 21st of March 2019 at 11 a.m. UK time. So detailed guide for applicants, which provide guidance on how to complete and submit the application forms, are available on the Erasmus Plus website. There are separate guides for vet and adult education, so please make sure you refer to the correct one. As discussed, you can listen to our pre-recorded application support webinars depending on the project type. The link to where they can be viewed is in your handout. If you haven't done so already, please sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the CALL and Erasmus Plus program. And on our website, you can also find other important information and key documents to support you with completing your application. If you have any further queries about applying for Key Action 2 VET after referring to the guidance, please contact our helpline by phone or email, and our team will be happy to help you. The contact details are coming up. So that brings us to the end of our webinar today. Thank you all for your attention and participation. We hope you found it useful. We'll be around for a few more minutes to answer any final questions, and if there are any more that come up after today, do contact our helpline via the details shown on the screen. Do also keep an eye on the Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance. We hope you found the session useful today, and once you leave the webinar, please can you complete the feedback form which will appear after you leave. We wish you luck with your future applications.